You know by now that we're all about the journey. June's journey, that is. I feel this game was made for us specifically. It's the closest I've come to feeling like I've been dropped in the middle of a mystery novel set in the 1920s.
That's because you get to play as June, a globe-trotting flapper/amateur sleuth who lives to solve mysteries. You get to visit all sorts of fascinating places, from Paris to Cuba. You beat levels by identifying hidden objects in the scene. And we found that the more we play, the sharper our observational skills become.
The game is delightful, and a wonderful way to relax. I'll often pull my phone out and play it when I've got a free moment, like I'm on hold with an archive, or I'm waiting for a courthouse to open up in the morning. I'm currently on Chapter 16, meaning I'm searching for the son of June's housekeeper, who's on the run from New Orleans gamblers and the police. It's a wild time.
We know our audience is filled with folks who love a good mystery. Now is your chance to try your hand at being a sleuth yourself. Discover your inner detective when you download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android. Content warning. This episode contains discussion of violence, sexual crimes, and murder, including the murder and sexual exploitation of children.
On November 3rd, 2022, a major development happened in the case against Richard Allen. The Honorable Judge Fran Gull officially stepped in and took charge of proceedings.
Let's rewind just a bit to contextualize that moment in time. Allen had just been arrested and charged with murdering Abigail Williams and Liberty German. There was a lot of excitement and chatter amongst the public. This was, of course, a huge milestone, but there also seemed to be much confusion in the local Carroll County courthouse. Despite repeated requests from a variety of media outlets, Carroll County prosecutor Nick McLeland refused to release the probable cause affidavit against Allen. The accused man did not appear to have defense attorneys representing his interests. Then, after sending out a pretty intense email about his level of discomfort with the widespread scrutiny on the Delphi murders, Carroll Circuit Court Judge Benjamin Diener abruptly recused himself from the case altogether.
Most of the time, we find it prudent to prioritize sharing reported facts, expert insights, and carefully thought-out legal analysis over our own personal opinions. We care deeply about this case and in getting justice for Libby and Abby, and oftentimes it's just not helpful to share our unfiltered feelings. But we are comfortable saying now that we were somewhat anxious about the judicial noise surrounding the case on November 2nd, 2022. Unbeknownst to us, the Indiana Supreme Court would announce the selection of a new judge the following day. They picked, of course, Allen County Superior Court Judge Fran Gull.
As we researched her background, the Indiana Supreme Court's choice made quite a bit of sense. Judge Gull has years of judicial experience. Her tenure on the bench began in 1997, and she has been re-elected 4 times. She has presided over high-profile murder cases. She's also served as a leader within the Allen County legal community. Now, for our non-Hoosier listeners, Allen County, where the city of Fort Wayne is located, is nearly 2 hours to the northeast of Carroll County.
In the months since her appointment, those of us covering the case have had a few opportunities to form impressions of the judge at the various pretrial hearings in Allen's case. At these hearings, her communication style is serious, but she is still able to speak lightly with the attorneys about matters like scheduling.
And she herself has a very busy schedule. In conversations with the attorneys in this case, she has in the past noted the high volume of trials and hearings she has on her docket. Legal matters in Allen County won't come to a halt just because the administrative judge of its criminal division is involved in a high-profile case out of town.
Judge Gull comes across as no-nonsense, but reasonable. We've noted on the show that a lot of journalists and spectators are intimidated by her, especially by her admonition that any phone that goes off in her courtroom will be seized and annihilated. Nobody thought that was a bluff. We'll never forget one quiet panic up and down the pre-dawn line outside the courtroom as journalists and producers hurried off to secure their phones elsewhere, rather than risk public humiliation and property destruction. We like to live dangerously, so we just powered off our phones.
Now, we have even more to share about Judge Gull. While we are all awaiting future developments in the ongoing case against Allen, we feel that one way for us all to better understand what's going on, and what may happen in the future, would be to take a close look at the principals in the legal case. Namely, defense attorneys Brad Rozzi and Andy Baldwin, prosecutor Nicholas McLeland, and of course, the judge. We've previously covered the careers of the two defense attorneys. Today, we'll be turning our eyes towards the bench. We want to get a better view of the judge who has been tasked with steering this case through the legal system.
In this first episode of 3, we'll go into Judge Gull's background, first as a prosecutor, then as a judge. In our next 2 episodes, we'll delve deeper into some of the major cases she's presided over. We'll even get an opportunity to see Judge Gull in action in one of her most impactful roles. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
We first connected while looking into the Burger Chef murders, an Indiana cold case. Together, we built a spreadsheet documenting hundreds of cases of restaurant-related homicides. That original spreadsheet gave way to our podcast, The Murder Sheet.
Now we maintain that same research-centric, investigative approach as we look into all sorts of homicides, including unsolved cases, historical crimes, and, of course, restaurant murders.
We don't just chat about the headlines. Our podcast is a platform for our journalism. The Murder Sheet focuses on investigative reporting, thoughtful analysis, thorough research, and in-depth interviews.
We're the Murder Sheet.
And this is The Delphi Murders, the Honorable Judge Fran Gull presiding. Part 1, Beyond This Court. Over the course of this episode, we are going to try to take you through Judge Gull's early legal career. We'll try to single out moments that stand out to us, or ones that could have some bearing on how we might expect her to handle aspects of the case against Richard Allen.
As far as her educational background goes, Judge Gull attended St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana. Her degree was in political science. Later on, she told the Indiana Lawyer that her most memorable non-legal gig was working as a third-shift nurse's aide in a nursing home during her years as an undergraduate. She then earned her Juris Doctor at Valparaiso University School of Law. In 1983, she headed 2 hours southwest, having secured a clerkship in the Allen Superior Court in Fort Wayne, Indiana. According to a memorial resolution from the Allen County Bar Association, she also clerked with Judge Alfred Mullering at some point. Her stint as a law clerk focused on the family and criminal divisions, according to the Indiana Lawyer.
By 1987, Fran Gull had joined the Allen County Prosecutor's Office. Keep in mind, at this time, Allen County had never had a woman elected prosecutor. It didn't have any female judges either. Women had become judges and prosecutors elsewhere in Indiana, for sure. But Judge Nancy Boyer would be the first woman to become an Allen County judge in 1991. With her 2002 election, Karen Richards would become the county's first female prosecutor. So Gull would soon be at the forefront of a group of women securing prominent positions in the county's legal community, ultimately resulting in what Wayne.com would dub a majority female bench in the Superior Court in 2019, with 5 women serving on the county's 9-person Superior Court bench.
Fran Gull juggled a lot of responsibilities during her time in the prosecutor's office, according to a profile that ran in the Indiana Lawyer. From 1988 to 1989, she was a magistrate for the Civil Division of the Allen County Circuit Court. She was chief counsel for the criminal division, the section chief for the felony division, and also a deputy prosecuting attorney in the sex crimes unit. In 1990, she was promoted to chief deputy prosecutor.
She also took on prosecuting some pretty bizarre and heavy crimes for the office. We'll go over some memorable cases where she was mentioned in local newspaper write-ups. She didn't necessarily take each one to trial, but she was involved enough for reporters to name her in the articles.
One was the 1991 case of a teenager named Adam A. Barnaba. He and an accomplice made a deal with a man they knew as Mr. Mephistopheles to burglarize a funeral home in order to steal a corpse for a satanic ritual. Mr. Mephistopheles was actually an undercover detective. Gull never tried this one in court. Barnaba ultimately confessed and got a year in prison. Now, before anyone starts wringing their hands about so-called satanic panic, keep in mind that Barnaba was busted this year in Oklahoma for sexually abusing a teenager.
That same year, Gull traveled with detectives Dan Camp and Al Feigl to Quantico, Virginia, to spend 3 days at the FBI's National Center for Analysis of Violent Crimes. They were there on behalf of 2 murdered girls from Fort Wayne. April Marie Tinsley was 8 years old when she was abducted, raped, and murdered in 1988. Then in 1990, 7-year-old Sarah Jean Bowker was molested and murdered, left drowned in mud. A heavy rain fell an hour before she was found, washing away potential evidence at the scene. Many wondered if the 2 cases were linked. 3 years later, the prosecutor's office closed one of the cases. Detectives had uncovered circumstantial evidence indicating that an elderly family friend, Roy Hensley, who was dead by then, had molested and murdered Sarah Jean. Gull told the press that her office was setting up a meeting with the Bowker family to discuss the findings. Meanwhile, April Tinsley's family wouldn't receive answers for decades. The Fort Wayne Police Department ultimately identified John Miller as the murderer in that case in July 2018, thanks to forensic genealogy work on the part of forensic company Parabon Nanolabs.
In 1992, Gull and Allen County prosecutor Stephen Sims teamed up to introduce a specific type of DNA analysis to Indiana, the polymerase chain reaction technique. That was in the murder of Maurice Simbang Lamb, an assistant professor of engineering at Fort Wayne's Indiana University-Purdue University campus. At that time, Lamb's body had not been recovered. It would ultimately be found weighed down in the St. Joseph River. Kojin So was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in 1992, and 2 other co-defendants later pled guilty. It's not clear in the Indiana Department of Corrections inmate lookup tool if So or his accomplice, Ka Nguyen, are still incarcerated, but it does appear that their co-conspirator, Benji Blauvelt, is out on parole.
By 1994, Gull had filled 2 filing cabinet drawers with unsolved cases. An Associated Press article from that year focused on several infant homicides in particular. The children in these unrelated cases each died of shaken baby syndrome or other injuries. In some, there just wasn't enough evidence to bring anyone to justice. Sometimes, we've heard true crime creators take the cynical view that prosecutors' offices are singularly focused on achieving high conviction rates by prioritizing easy wins. That certainly may be the case in some instances. But in many situations, it's unethical and misguided to bring a weak case to trial. That could mean ruining an innocent person's life, or risking the acquittal of a guilty person.
People who work in the justice system, law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, and defense attorneys, come face to face with depressing, horrific stories time after time. Judge Gull is no exception. As a prosecutor, she dealt with all manner of serious and troubling cases, from
questions of feticide in the murder of a pregnant 19-year-old,
to a case where a mother and daughter blamed each other in the suffocation death of a father with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, better known as Lou Gehrig's disease,
to a teenager who attempted to withdraw his plea in a move that Gull called a ruse to delay the inevitable. Sound familiar to anyone following Kagan Klein's case?
To a shootout where a Michigan man seized 9 hostages at a local Bob Evans before police stormed the restaurant and rescued everyone.
In some of Gull's cases, the public sentiment went against the prosecutor's office. Take the trial of Gavin Parker. He had shot and killed a peeping Tom, who turned out to be his brother-in-law. The community sided with him for defending his family. He walked away with a sentence of 4 years in prison. Gull told the papers that he had received a fair deal thanks to the efforts of his attorney, Donald Swanson, who she described as probably one of the best defense attorneys around.
Other cases prompted rather different reactions from the Fort Wayne community. One such case was the execution-style murder of Paul Rozzi. He was a young man who had moved to town in order to attend Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. He died because he happened to live in apartment 12 at the Spring Harbor Apartments. See, a woman that Rozzi had never even met told her boyfriend, Chris Hilton, that she had been raped. He asked about the perpetrator. She didn't name anyone, but did say that the man lived in apartment 12 at the Spring Harbor Apartments. Hilton tied a red bandana over his face and drove to the apartments with 2 friends. He accosted 2 women walking nearby. They pointed out the nearest apartment 12, but noted that there were multiple buildings at Spring Harbor with an apartment 12. Hilton did not care. He forced his way into Rozzi's place, put a pillow over the man's head, and shot him twice, even after his friends repeatedly questioned if he had the right guy. To be clear, he did not. Rozzi did not know Hilton or his girlfriend, and there were plenty of other apartment 12s at this complex. Rozzi died because Hilton was, to put it bluntly, a young man with anger issues who did not care about killing an innocent person and wrecking the lives of others in the process. To think that you can do everything right in life and then die on your knees, trying to reason with an utter fool, is depressing and enraging.
Anyways, Gull handled all sorts of hurdles in that case. Alfonso Garcia, one of Hilton's friends who had been there that night, came down with selective amnesia on the stand. The case was strong enough without his testimony, though. Hilton was convicted. The newspapers described Gull and Rozzi's family and friends crying and embracing after the trial. Hilton was ultimately released from prison in 2022.
Other cases ended with notable plea agreements. In 1994, Gull handled the case of a man named Dwayne Carter, who shot off a gun outside a local YMCA. The bullet hit and injured T.J. Jordan Jr., the son of a Baptist minister. Now, the Jordan family did not want Carter to go to prison for a lengthy sentence. Gull wrote up a plea agreement where Carter could serve part of his sentence doing community service with the Jordan's church. A 2016 article from Baptist News indicates that Jordan survived and even followed in his father's footsteps to become a preacher as well.
One of Gull's main tasks while in the prosecutor's office was prosecuting sexual crimes against women and children. Later, as chief deputy, homicide cases became her focus. Her court biography on Allen County's website indicates that she prosecuted hundreds of offenders in total.
Given her years of work with the Allen County Prosecutor's Office, some might have viewed Gull as a contender for the position of county prosecutor down the line. But she went a different route. In 1996, Fran Gull was elected to the bench of the Allen County Superior Court. Now, instead of trying cases against defendants, she'd be responsible for presiding over those cases.
But while Judge Gull came from a prosecutorial background, that didn't mean she necessarily always ruled in favor of her former colleagues. Early on in her judicial career, she made a few tough calls that we wanted to single out.
In August 1999, Judge Gull threw out the case against a man named Kenneth R. Shank, who had been charged with murdering a man named Michael G. Butler in a 1996 shooting in a Rally's parking lot. The reason she did this was because of multiple discovery violations. Now, as a reminder, discovery refers to the process of the prosecution providing the defense with any evidence and materials they've collected for trial. This conduct, Judge Gull wrote in her decision, is significant enough when viewed in the totality of the circumstances that the defendant's right to a fair trial has been compromised.
She took a similar tack in July of 2000 in a case that sparked perhaps even more controversy. A gunman had shot and killed a corrections officer named Sergeant Dan Osborne. The murder didn't occur at a jail or prison, though. It happened during a robbery at the Subway sandwich shop Osborne owned with his wife Rebecca. The victim had been wearing his uniform at the time, prompting speculation that he had been mistaken for a police officer.
In January of 2000, a 23-year-old man named Michael T. Lewis was charged with that murder, immediately after his acquittal in a federal bank robbery case in South Bend, Indiana. Prosecutors said that 3 witnesses heard Lewis admit to the murder. Lewis, though, claimed he was actually across town at the time, beating his girlfriend.
The murder trial came to an abrupt end in July of 2000. Newspaper reports from the time noted that both sides agreed that the proceedings weren't fair to the defendant. Prosecutors apparently hadn't disclosed key evidence to the defense until the last minute, including a police report about a man named Jarvis Bell, who had been sentenced to a 9-year prison stint for robbing Osborne's Subway restaurant. That's called exculpatory evidence. It's evidence that pointed away from Lewis and implicated a possible new suspect. It's hugely important when it comes to criminal cases. Prosecutors withholding such information can derail a trial.
And that's exactly what happened in this case. Judge Gull called a mistrial. The victim's widow, Rebecca Osborne, cried as she left the courthouse. Prosecutors dropped the charges against Lewis. The press made it clear that the chances of Osborne's case getting a resolution were slim. To wrap up this story, we note that Lewis could not stay out of trouble, apparently. In August of 2000, he got hit with a number of charges owing to his weapons dealing and fleeing from officers on a moped. He landed serious prison time. Public records indicate he only just now may be getting out.
In between the Butler and Osborne murder cases, Allen County prosecutor Robert W. Gevers II did something interesting. In August of 1999, he announced that all deputy prosecutors would be required to undergo a mandatory year-long training program regarding discovery. That was in direct response to the Butler case, as well as 2 other trials, a hit and run and an arson, that were plagued with discovery violation issues.
Still, there were other times where Judge Gull had to essentially put a stop to a case, such as a 2008 incident when the prosecution's biggest piece of evidence fell through. A blind and mentally impaired man named David Beville died in an AWS group home. The county brought neglect charges after his blood alcohol level was found to have been 0.231. But after it was discovered that a private laboratory had thrown out a sample proving that the blood came from the victim, Judge Gull dismissed the charges.
Neither Kevin nor I have ever served as a judge, but we can imagine that these kinds of calls are especially tough. Those were each important cases involving a brutal public shooting, the murder of a law enforcement official, and the death of a vulnerable man. We wanted to highlight each of these moments because the career of a judge isn't all about the trials where things proceed smoothly. Mistrials and dropped charges are rarely the result anyone who cares about victims, their families, or public safety wants. They are often unpopular within the community. They can be disappointing or even devastating for prosecutors and law enforcement. But judges have a responsibility to ensure defendants have fair trials and to not look the other way when tough calls are needed. Our justice system is not perfect, but it works better when everyone is held to a high standard. So without those kinds of hard but necessary decisions, the system corrupts over time. We've talked a lot about how great HelloFresh is when it comes to meals. They really want you to have it all. Free time and delicious food. That's why they take care of all the meal planning and even ship the ingredients right to your door so you've got everything you need to make a wonderful meal for yourself and your family. But let's chat a moment about a side of HelloFresh we didn't know about ourselves until very recently.
I'll be honest, I don't just eat at meal times. During the day or when I'm relaxing in the evening, I like to munch on snacks or sides. And I assumed that was something HelloFresh could not help me with. So I would still have to trudge out to the grocery store and stand in line to get those sorts of treats. But I was wrong.
Let me tell you about HelloFresh Market. It lets you shop online and take your pick from a curated selection of over 100 items, including all sorts of tasty treats and desserts. And it will all be added to your weekly HelloFresh delivery. It's the best of meal kits and online grocery shopping combined in one weekly box.
This is another great reason to try out HelloFresh. And remember, Murder Sheet listeners get a special discount.
Go to hellofresh.com/msheet50 and use code msheet50 for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, go to hellofresh.com/msheet50 and use code msheet50 for 50% off plus free shipping. Try out America's #1 meal kit today. We are so delighted to work with our sponsor, Brilliant Earth. This is a company that offers some of the most brilliant and romantic engagement rings and wedding bands out there, all the while ensuring a commitment to ethical sourcing and sustainability.
If you're looking to get married or to become engaged, or even if you're just searching for a special piece of fine jewelry, you have to check out their website. They make browsing so easy.
They even let you design your own perfect engagement ring, or you can shop by style. I love the delicate willow rings, along with the 3-stone Nadia rings and the classic freesia rings. It's so hard to choose.
And you don't have to worry about the ethical implications of your purchase. Your special gift, your engagement ring, your wedding band, should never be tarnished by the idea that the gems or materials came from an abusive system.
See, Brilliant Earth has a commitment to beyond conflict-free diamonds. That means one thing. They only accept diamonds from mining operations in countries that strictly follow international labor, trade, and environmental standards. Fewer than 1% of other diamond suppliers meet Brilliant Earth standards.
You can feel good about your purchase, knowing that you're supporting a brand that actually cares about its ethical impact and is committed to fostering better standards in the jewelry business.
Check out all of their beautiful pieces at brilliantearth.com. That's brilliantearth.com.
In looking back through newspapers, a few singular moments stand out in Judge Gull's judicial career. In 2000, she ruled on the case of Robert Portee. He had been shot and left paralyzed while robbing a gas station. His crime was serious. He had pointed a gun at employees, using threats to attempt to commit this theft. But given the devastating nature of his injuries, Judge Gull suspended his entire sentence. This community is tired of being robbed, of being shot, she said. But I honestly don't know what the Department of Correction would do with you. You would die in DOC, and I am not giving you a death sentence. Portee ultimately died in 2011.
In 2007, a dramatic incident occurred just outside of Judge Gull's courtroom. A defendant named Cicero Offerly was convicted of charges pertaining to molesting a 10-year-old he was babysitting. He broke free and threw himself off the courthouse balcony. Offerly survived, and Judge Gull ordered that he receive psychiatric treatment in prison. He's since been released.
One thing that Judge Gull seems to have little tolerance for were disruptions in her courtroom. In 2013, defendant Deadrian Boykins was convicted of the murder of Elijah Freeman. As Freeman's mother testified in court, Boykins cursed at her. Judge Gull called his behavior disrespectful, reprehensible, and vulgar. She sentenced him to the maximum of 65 years in prison. He is still incarcerated.
In plenty of instances, Judge Gull would directly confront those convicted of terrible crimes in her courtroom, or even those who admitted to severe acts of wrongdoing.
I've always held that the best prosecutors are able to wield a sense of righteous anger, an ability to speak for the victims, both living and dead. In these statements, we believe we can hear a bit of the prosecutor Judge Gull once was.
Take the case of Tina Morris, who stabbed her daughter's college roommate, Lola Martinez, to death, and then poured scalding water on her body. As she sentenced her to 60 years in prison, Gull said Morris's actions just defy humanity. Morris is still incarcerated, and her earliest possible release date is October 16, 2036.
In another, a convicted sex offender named Jeffrey Reichert beat and tortured his wife for refusing to clean up the cat's litter box, leaving her confined to a nursing home. forced to use a feeding tube.
Not 1 square inch of your wife's body is not covered with bruises, deep bruises, cuts, abrasions. It's astounding she's still alive, Gull said at the sentencing. Jeffrey Reichert has since died.
In the case of a man named Jonathan Rhodes, who was convicted for his role in the killings of 2 men, Judge Gull reminded him of the many chances he'd been given to rehabilitate. Instead of moving on from his life of crime, she said he wreaked havoc in his wake. He is still incarcerated.
When Michelle Van Meter, a former religious education teacher at Fort Wayne's St. Jude Catholic Parish, pled guilty to sexually assaulting 3 boys and a teenager with mental disabilities, Judge Gull called her actions calculated and intentional, and sentenced her to 30 years. Van Meter has since received parole.
Then there was the case of Kenitra Settle. She pled guilty to disposing of the body of her 5-year-old daughter in the trash. The girl suffered from cerebral palsy, and Settle claimed to have found her dead. While acknowledging Settle's mental health issues, Judge Gull highlighted the defendant's refusal to seek treatment, saying, "I agree with your brother that jail is not the best place for you. But where am I supposed to put you when you do not follow through? You threw her in a dumpster like yesterday's garbage. How a mother can do that is absolutely beyond this court." Settle has since been released.
In one of her most recent cases, Judge Gull handed 5 life sentences to Cohen Hans Barron for killing his girlfriend Sarah Nicole Zent and her 3 young kids, Carter, Ashton, and Aubrey. "I can recall no circumstances this court has witnessed that was as horrific as this crime," Judge Gull said.
We'll stop there for now. So far, we've delved into the beginnings of Judge Gull's legal career, specifically her tenure with the Allen County Prosecutor's Office. We've talked about some of her tough cases, where either she had to make hard calls or preside over crimes involving extreme brutality. In our next episode, we'll cover some of her more widely publicized cases and talk about how Judge Gull's profile has grown in the Indiana judicial system over time.
This episode relied extensively on reporting from journalists on the ground.
The Associated Press included lots of in-depth coverage of the Allen County court system, so we drew from that frequently. So did Fort Wayne's Journal-Gazette. We'll link to the profile on Judge Gull that ran in the Indiana Lawyer.
Local journalists on the ground are so crucial to every community. We would really encourage folks to, if they can, support local journalism. When local news outlets slide by the wayside, all sorts of bad things happen in the ensuing darkness. With that being said, we relied on information that ran in the following publications. We'll read out their names and locations to avoid confusion. Baptist News,
The Bedford Times-Mail,
CBS 4,
the Columbus Republic,
the Evansville Courier and Press,
the Franklin Daily Journal,
Fox 59,
the Greenfield Daily Reporter,
Indiana Capital Chronicle,
the Indianapolis News,
the Indianapolis Star,
the Jasper Herald,
the Kokomo Tribune,
the Lafayette Journal and Courier,
the Logansport Pharaohs Tribune,
the Martinsville Reporter-Times,
the Midland Reporter Telegram,
the Muncie Star-Press,
the Munster Times,
the Noblesville Ledger,
the Richmond Palladium Item,
the Seymour Tribune,
the South Bend Tribune,
the Tipton County Tribune,
Valparaiso University School of Law's Alumni News Magazine,
Valparaiso University School of Law's The Amicus,
the Vedette Messenger of Porter County,
the Vincennes Sun Commercial,
Wayne.com.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.
I want to take a moment here to say thanks again to Brilliant Earth. I think in this day and age, it's always difficult to find a company that delivers fine quality products while still maintaining high ethical standards. And that's especially hard to find in the jewelry business. But Brilliant Earth is that company.
Absolutely. They've actually trademarked their Beyond Conflict-Free guarantee. That essentially means that they're going above and beyond to ensure that their diamonds are ethically sourced. They offer a wide range of different natural diamonds as well as lab diamonds. But you can rest assured that these are going to be coming from operators in countries that are maintaining global standards when it comes to labor and environmental practices. So you won't have your special ring, your engagement ring, your wedding band be tainted with this idea that it came from an unethical and problematic situation. It's a real load off of your mind as a consumer, because even try as we might, it's often hard to kind of maintain those best practices in your own life when you're shopping for products. So this is a brand that does the work for you in that.
And you can visit their website. They have a terrific selection of quality merchandise.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that it's not just diamond engagement rings and wedding bands. They have jewelry for men. They have religious jewelry. They have tennis bracelets that are super cute. I love their willow rings because they're kind of like have a nature-y vibe. And I mean, I don't consider myself like a hippie or anything, but I vibe with those. I think they were really pretty. I also like their freesia diamond rings. Those are more of like the classic engagement ring you think of when you think of engagement rings. And so I just think there's something for everybody. I think you can go in there and look at some of their beautiful offerings, but you could actually go and design your own ring to ensure that you're getting the perfect thing that just matches your personality, makes a statement, and, tells people a bit about, what you like, what your tastes are, and how you are as a person. So if you're looking for an engagement ring, if you're looking for a wedding band, if you're just looking for a gift for someone that you care about who loves jewelry, visit brilliantearth.com. They've got a great selection. Check it out. And you really can't go wrong with that.
And again, that's brilliantearth.com.